you, in particular in current situation, the United Kingdom had been a country which was a guarantee during the signing of the Budapest Memorandum. And what is the current role of the United Kingdom for the, stopping the Russian aggression, guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty? Because we see what Germany does with the Minsk agreement, what is the role of France, but what is the specific role of the United Kingdom?
I think it's very important that the United Kingdom does everything it can to support the European Union, support the United States, in ensuring that there is a proper and just solution to the Ukrainian conflict that allows the people of Ukraine to decide their own future and for the country to have its own destiny in its own hands. The leadership on the Minsk agreements has been taken by Germany and France, but I know from my discussions with the present UK government that they remain very strongly engaged and interested and committed on this issue.
But what would be the specific role, if we are thinking creatively, because there are still specific roles for different countries?
Well, I think the role that the UK can always play, if it puts itself in the right position, is to make sure that America and Europe stay on the same side. And I think this is particularly important. There are some differences in Europe, but they shouldn't be such differences that prevent us taking a clear and unified stand on what is a very clear position. In the current situation, when there is an announcement of by the United Kingdom to hold a referendum on being a member of the European Union, there are people who say it weakens the European Union. What would be your response? First, I was not in favour of having a referendum. Secondly, I believe that Britain must stay a member of the European Union. I think it's important for Britain, important for Europe. Thirdly, however, there is a government that has won an election. They've won it on a programme that includes having a referendum. So we're going to have one. But I still believe that Britain will vote to stay in. And I believe that in any event, it's important that Britain exercises leadership in Europe. Europe is undergoing a big process of change and reform itself. And especially when we see what is happening with Russia today, it's all the more important for Britain to be a key and strong player in Europe. You mentioned today that once you have a divided community because of the weak stems, and that's what happened here, and that's what happened during the conflict in Northern Ireland, there is a bitterness, and there should be particular ways to get out of it. From you, going through all this agreement, Good Friday Agreement and everything, what are the key mistakes to be avoided? The key mistake is to be bold enough to take the steps of leadership necessary to resolve the dispute, rather than, as we would say, play to the gallery of your own support. In other words, to resolve this conflict, we need to have security imposed, that's clear. We need then also, however, to have a framework going forward that is fair, that takes account of the differences within the country. And then we need the visionary leadership to be prepared to say even to your own support, look, this is the right way forward, and it's a fair way forward. And that is a very hard thing to do, because you will get opposition to that. And there will always be someone who tries to be more nationalistic than the other person. The devolution in the United Kingdom, at least when we were shown there, we were traveling to Scotland, to Wales, and we always said that this is kind of a very significant success. At the same time, currently, with the referendum for the Scottish independence, the nationalism is growing, so it seems, what are the ways also, what could be the mistakes, what are the things which were maybe not taken into account? That's a very good question. I mean, first of all, by the way, we have resolved the Scottish independence issue by the free vote of the people. So we weren't afraid even to allow Scotland to leave the United Kingdom if that's what the people chose. Fortunately, they chose not. Secondly, however, we came close to losing that referendum because we allowed too much cultural difference to arise between Scotland and England, and we need to recover that common and shared sense of history and future. And thirdly, we need to stand up against this kind of nationalist sentiment that is always about blaming someone else for your problems. The future of Scotland is not going to be determined by Scotland becoming more Scottish. The future of England won't be determined by the English becoming more English. And the future of France won't be determined by the French becoming more French. The problems that you face today in the world are problems to do with globalization, economic change, and they require good policy and clear leadership. And national sentiment in terms of national pride is a great thing. National sentiment, when it becomes an excuse to blame others, is not good.
My question is about the international law and order. You spend every month you go to the Middle East, you're there and an envoy, but in the current situation we see that here in Ukraine, with the Russian aggression, it hasn't worked with the annexation of Crimea, with all the other breach of all the possible agreements. It's not very helpful as well in the Middle East. The issue with the veto in the Security Council isn't bringing the people somewhere, so there is a kind of stalemate. This is a challenge, but what are also, again, the creative ways to get out of this stalemate?
Well, one thing is absolutely clear, that it's only if you're prepared to stand up for what you believe in and stand up strongly that you can prevail. So, whether it's in the Middle East fighting extremism or it's here making sure that we push back against aggression, that doesn't mean to say we don't try and find a way through, but it means to say that we have to recognize the need for strength. And the UN Security Council is very important, but it's important that we demystify it. It is a collection of countries with interests. It's not like an objective Supreme Court, right? So that's why I think it's very important at this moment in time for the West to be very clear as to where it stands on this Ukraine issue.
So what were your relations with Mr. Putin? How did you communicate with him? And because you had a chance.
Yeah, at the beginning they were very good, actually. And I had high hopes that Russia would see its future in a European direction. I still hope, because we've no quarrel with the Russian people, that this, in the end, is what happens. But, the difference between the two value systems can be seen very clearly over Ukraine. My view about Ukraine is it should be for you to decide your future. Right? So if you decided you wanted to go east, that's your future. But if you don't decide that and you decide you want to come with us, then you should be free to do so. So and I hope in time we can get to a better understanding with Russia that in the world that is developing, it's important that we're working together, but you can only work together if there are certain basic shared rules that are obeyed.
But there are also those, it's not just about the Kremlin which pushes this discourse that, the many things had been broken after the US invasion to the Iraq because a kind of world order had been changed, so this relativity comes to the discussion that, that was you who started, also the United Kingdom had participated a lot in the campaign.
Yeah, it's very important we just get one thing clear about this, though. The idea that Saddam Hussein's Iraq was the same as Ukraine is not true, okay? And what's more, what we allowed in Iraq was a government to be elected by the people. Now, you can agree with what we did in Iraq or disagree, but let's not confuse these two issues.
There are the Ukrainian money also laundered through the land property, which is also in the United Kingdom. So the idea is, what is the change? How are you supporting, for instance, the change in the legislation ending the anonymous offshore property ownership in real estates, which is very common in the United Kingdom and in London in particular?
Look, we should be working with the Ukrainian authorities to do all we can to bring transparency and accountability and that proper rules are obeyed. And the UK, I'm sure, will, whatever government is in place, would want to work with you to do that. Because the other part of this whole story is what has happened to Ukraine since you got independence from the Soviet Union. The fact is, unfortunately, instead of 20 years of progress and good government, it's not what you had. And one of the reasons why all of this has happened is because of the weakness of the country under successive governments. And this is why it's so important the reform program now being pursued is successful.
So we need to end, but just to clarify that something could be done also not by the Ukrainians themselves, if we speak about this offshore banking.
Yeah, I don't know the details of this, but we should, obviously the UK should fulfill its obligations internationally and in any way we can to help the government bring proper transparency here.
Thanks, that was very important to hear for us as well.
Okay.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk to you.
Thanks.